The walls of the Dwarven fortress rise grim and proud from the early morning mist. Vigilant sentries pace the battlements, peering out to the north, and a distant sound reaches their ears. The creak and groan of siege engines, and even worse, above, the flap, flap, flap of dragon wings. Yes, today on Bane Wars, the Fire Elves lay siege to the Dwarven fort. Hi, I'm Rob Poyton. Thanks for joining me today on Dragon's Teeth for the second of our two battles. So, there's been a lot of issues between the Fire Elves and the Dwarves, to put it mildly, and it's been going pretty badly for the Dwarves. The Fire Elves have taken over their mining operation. Reinforcements were rushed up from the south, and they've ended up in a fortress a few miles to the south of the mining operation. Now, the Dwarves have not really made any hostile moves. In effect, they've been waiting for further reinforcements to arrive, perhaps Dwarvish, perhaps other allies. That is all ongoing as part of the campaign. But effectively, the Fire Elves got fed up of waiting. They've built some siege towers and other bits and pieces, and they've decided to attack. So that's what we're going to play out today. Points-wise, the forces are fairly evenly matched. However, the Elves do have that big advantage of dragons, a couple of dragons. And as we saw before, when they attacked the entrance to the mine, those dragons really are an asset when it comes to this type of battle, because they're able to fly over defences and fortifications and basically strafe whoever's standing on them below. So it's quite a powerful weapon. However, the Dwarves do have one or two tricks up their sleeves as well, as no doubt will be revealed. So let's see how the battle develops. Steve's in charge of the Fire Elves, and as the Dwarves are an NPC group, I'm taking control of them. And as you can see, here's our layout. We've got that 10mm fort that I got off eBay recently. We've got the Elves pretty much surrounding it. They've got a couple of siege towers, they've got a catapult. The Dwarves have got a ballista in that tower to the right that proved remarkably ineffective. There's the second siege tower, and a lot of the elf units are dismounted cavalry here, with I think there's an archmage, a couple of heroes, and of course those dragons will be popping up very soon. The dwarf forces, they've got heavy crossbows on the front battlements there, light crossbows to the side, they've got some ravens. They've got quite a strong unit of guards in the middle there. Their priest is in the tower. He's going to be casting some spells in a bit. Their commander is down in the courtyard. And here's the dragons. They pop up very quick, flying over the battlements and strafing the dwarves below. Turn 1, the elves advance. Now the problem for the dwarves is they haven't got enough missile troops to man every wall. So the ones at the front are in place, but they're going to be shifting the light crossbow around to get best field of fire. Of course, that is hampered a bit by those dragons. And the siege tower at the front starts moving forward. We're using the siege rules from the Fantastic Battles rule set. We did make one or two tweaks that you'll see as we go along. And we've got our first exchange of fire between the archers and the crossbows on the walls. And of course, as you'd expect, those crossbows are pretty difficult to hit, being behind the battlements as they are. So with no opposition to speak of, that first elf siege tower makes the walls, and the elf dismounted cavalry start pouring into that tower there. We're breached straight away. After that exchange of missile fire at the front, that siege tower rumbles onwards towards the wall. Our dwarf priest there casts a thunderbolt at it. This is one of our homebrew spells, which does a bit of damage to the siege tower, but doesn't stop it coming. The dragons and dwarves continue to exchange flames and bolts, and the dwarves are definitely getting the worst of that. They are doing a little bit of damage to the dragons. And this is Steve rolling his dice to see if his off-table units turn up yet, and they're not arriving this move. I think he's got a few companies of cavalry that were off-table. his unit in the tower gets to fire down on those dwarves on the battlements below, so they're taking it from both angles now. The siege tower at the front rumbles into the wall. Of course, those heavy crossbows have a slow rate of fire, and I love this. Look, the little ramp comes down and elves come streaming across it to attack the dwarves. How cinematic. The dwarf guards moved up to the tower to try and repel the elves, and this is where we get into a bit of a problem, because of course the basin is 40mm by 40mm. Luckily we've got some 20mm strips here, so we're able to put the sort of figures on the model itself. And what we did, we just came to a sort of mutual agreement as to how many companies would be involved in each of those melees. So we worked it out, we managed to work it out okay. The dwarf player also gets to roll some dice at the start of the next turn for reasons as yet undisclosed. Things get even worse for the dwarves because those dragons, having fried all the crossbows, now jump over the wall and into the fortress itself. There's a dragon in my courtyard. The dwarf priest is busy casting bless spells on his forces on the battlements there to try and shore them up a bit. Now the elf mage has not been idle either. He has spent 3 turns with the aid of his acolytes casting a summon elemental spell, and he succeeded. That white dragon figure is a fire elemental. So there's a dragon in the courtyard, there's one peering over the wall, and there's a fire elemental at the front gate. Oh, and I mentioned that ballista at the start that the dwarves have there. That was taking pot shots at the catapult, which was returning fire. Bit of a duel going on. And the ballista missed every single time. And in fact the catapult eventually destroyed it. And now we get some surprises, because where there's dwarves there's tunnels, and there's various tunnels leading in and out of the fort. Unknown to the dwarves, the elves discovered one of these, infiltrated it, and have just popped up inside the fort there. At the same time, quite by chance, a lot of dwarves have popped up outside the fort. They were hiding in some of the other tunnels. So a double surprise, but I think the elves have the advantage there, coming up inside the fort. And that poor dwarf guard unit now faces attack from the elf infantry who have just infiltrated. They've got a dragon, and they're also fighting that group of elves who are storming the tower. So it's not looking too good for them. Meanwhile, at the front, the dwarves are sort of holding out okay against the siege tower, but of course now we've got that fire elemental moving in. A lot of pressure for the dwarves then, and I think those tunnel reinforcements arrived just a couple of turns too late. If they'd have come earlier and been able to attack the elf forces while they are outside, then the dwarves would have stood a better chance. Of course, a lot of the elf units are now inside the fort and really beyond reach of those reinforcements. One unit of miners does almost make it to the siege tower to attack it, but the elves still have units to spare, and they're going to move one of those units round to threaten the miners in the flank. And we've still got that dragon floating around there as well. Oh, and by the way, that unit of elf infiltrators is led by their hero, Lord Tyrion, who I must say is having a rather splendid campaign. He's doing very well. I'm sure he's bound for promotion at the end of all of this. And as expected, in the next round of melee, that Dwarven unit in the courtyard is gone. They're totally destroyed, leaving a dwarf general looking a little bit lost and lonely there. And on the front battlements, the fire elemental wreaks havoc now. The heavy crossbow unit is destroyed, despite the elves falling off the siege tower there. That unit is totally gone. So the elves have taken the front wall. Situation at the end of play then, the elves have pretty much got control of the fort now, except for a couple of dwarf units still fighting. We've got a unit of dwarf miners, but they're really too far away to do anything. And we've got that other unit of dwarf miners who have closed in, but look at what they're facing now. The dragon, that unit on the left. There's still that other dragon inside who can pop over the wall, and the fire elemental is still going as well. So the dwarves concede defeat at this point. Their guard unit will fight to the death. They're going to try and buy time for their other units and generals and priests to escape. But that's it, the poor old dwarves are defeated again. Well, a pretty decisive win for the elves there. The fortress is captured, and not too badly damaged either. The fire elves didn't really take a lot of casualties considering, and I think again the big strength of the elves was those dragons, which managed to get first of all flying over the wall, then into the castle itself to attack the units within. The dwarves didn't really have any great defence against the siege tower. The ballista didn't really do anything. The dwarf priest was a little bit unlucky with some of his spell rolls. He could have maybe been a little more effective, but well, where he is, we don't know at the moment, because that's how things stand. We've got the dwarf guard fought to the death. They never surrender. However, the dwarf general was captured. The dwarf priest and the hero disappeared into that network of tunnels, and most of the miners fled as well. So, of course, post-battle, we'll see what happens there. Are the fire elves going to hunt those those renegade dwarves down? Are they just going to let them escape? Well, we shall see. Whatever happens, the elves now have possession of a very strong fortress in a very good position. And mentioning post-battle, another thing that will happen as well is, of course, we'll determine casualties. We'll determine how long it takes for any units to get back up to strength, or if they'll be getting reinforcements. And also, as part of our character development, there may well be promotions for captains, for generals, for magic users who perform particularly well during those battles. So that's all going to be taking place over the next turn or so. And it's going to be interesting to see how things develop from here. I think, as I said last time, we're coming to the end of the exploration phase now. So it might well be that the elves decide to consolidate their position here. They haven't actually found their major objective yet, though they have found one or two others that they weren't expecting at all. So they've still got that left to do. Now, how close that objective is and where exactly it is, of course, the elves don't know, but I'm sure a search for that is going to form part of their activities, at least for the remaining few turns. Stay tuned to see what happens next. As always, please do keep your comments, questions and suggestions coming in, and let me know how you might have handled that siege as attacker or defender. Can you see any major mistakes made there? Do you think any things could have been done different? And also, as a general point, I'm very interested to hear how people handle sieges in their own games. This is the first time we've had a major siege using the Fantastic Battles rules, and they work very well. We tweaked one or two things, of course, to fit in with the campaign, but overall we were very pleased with how the rules worked. And of course, having that MDF 10mm fortress was really nice as well. In fact, I think Steve has ordered one for himself, and I'm thinking possibly about getting another one just to expand it. We've got a bit of a taste for sieges now. All right, thanks for watching. Keep your questions coming in. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you next time.